Have you felt out of place this August? Not just tired, not just confused, but fundamentally disconnected? Like you're floating through familiar routines in a body that doesn't feel quite like yours. Like the world kept spinning, but something inside you stopped responding, as if your inner compass got scrambled in a storm you couldn't see. You may have found yourself questioning everything: your direction, your connections, your desires, even your purpose. This month didn't just feel slow. It felt unnaturally quiet. And in that quiet, there was discomfort. Not because you failed to move forward, but because the energy around you refused to let you. Everything slowed to a crawl. Opportunities paused. Clarity disappeared. The things you were chasing seemed to run further away, and the things you were avoiding suddenly stood face to face with you. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a divine recalibration. Because the truth is, August wasn't meant to carry momentum. It was meant to interrupt it. The universe didn't want action. It wanted attention. It wanted you to sit inside your own frequency long enough to hear the static, to feel where you were still carrying the weight of old timelines, to notice where your nervous system still contracts around outdated identities, old betrayals, or unconscious survival modes that no longer match who you're becoming. This wasn't a punishment. It was a spiritual pause designed to detox your path of everything you were dragging with you unconsciously. That kind of stillness can feel brutal, because stillness amplifies everything you've been avoiding. It magnifies emotional residue, old wounds, lingering attachments, the pieces of yourself you've buried beneath distractions and movement. In the quiet of August, you may have felt waves of unexpected emotion rising: sadness, anxiety, frustration, or even apathy. You weren't regressing. You were purging. This month brought back memories, not to haunt you, but to test you. You may have dreamed of people from your past. You may have felt nostalgic for toxic patterns. You may have caught yourself reaching for validation from sources that once drained you. These are not coincidences. These are energetic echoes resurfacing so you can respond differently. You're being asked, are you truly done with this version of you? Because when you're stepping into a higher timeline, the lower ones will always call out for one last dance. And it's in those moments, when you feel the tug of the past, that you decide your direction. This month wasn't meant to bring rewards. It was meant to test your roots. And tests don't always look like challenges. Sometimes they look like nothing. No messages. No progress. No signs. Just you, sitting with yourself, wondering why you feel like a stranger in your own life. But underneath that silence, something sacred was happening. Your soul was being rewired. Not with noise, but with truth. And truth often arrives as an echo, something soft, easily missed, only audible when the rest of the world goes quiet. You didn't lose momentum, you just returned to stillness long enough to hear the parts of you that were always whispering, "We don't belong here anymore." That's why your energy fell off. That's why your emotions were unpredictable. That's why your body aches or shuts down in strange ways. You weren't malfunctioning, you were shedding. Your nervous system has been untangled from timelines that no longer match your vibration. And just like a snake sheds its skin, you don't get to keep the old protection when your spirit is calling for expansion. Stillness is not stagnation. Stillness is sacred restructuring. And this August, whether you realized it or not, you were undergoing deep spiritual architecture. The scaffolding of your identity was being rearranged. Old attachments loosened. Outdated coping patterns collapsed. And beneath it all, the raw foundation of your truest self started breathing again, even if it felt like suffocation at first. So if this month felt isolating, hollow, or uncomfortable, you weren't being pushed away from life. You were being pulled back to your own frequency. Not to punish you, but to remind you that your power never lived outside of you. You are not here to be busy. You are here to be aligned. And this month, with all its stillness and silence, was the universe's way of making sure you remember the difference. Because movement without alignment is just noise. And silence with awareness? That's power. August didn't roar. It whispered. But those whispers were louder than thunder if you were tuned into your soul. This wasn't a month of visible chaos. It was an invisible rearrangement. And in that invisibility, many mistook it for nothingness. But don't be fooled. The work that happens in the unseen realms is always the most powerful. August didn't shock you. It came to observe you, to measure your frequency, to scan the subtle signals you send out when no one's watching, to test whether your inner alignment holds when the world is quiet and you're left alone with your own thoughts. It wasn't about what showed up. It was about how you responded to the void. This month was like walking through a dreamscape made of old choices. One moment you felt free, the next moment you were spiraling into a version of yourself you swore you'd already outgrown. But that was the point. The energy of August was calibrated to bring back energetic echoes, not to punish you, but to reveal you, to show you how much power you give away when you confuse peace with passivity. To ask, will you go silent to keep the peace? Will you lower your light just to avoid being misunderstood? The universe wasn't punishing you. It was testing your frequency stability under pressure. And many of the people you thought were part of your future, August revealed otherwise. Not through drama, not through confrontation, but through disconnection, through the awkward silence, through the unanswered messages, through the gnawing intuition that said, this season is over. That was August's subtle brilliance. It removed people without needing to explain why. It taught you how to interpret energetic exits without attaching meaning. It lets relationships fade out softly, not out of cruelty, but because your spirit finally understood. Not everyone who walks beside you is meant to rise with you. But maybe the most unsettling thing about August was how empty it felt. Like the world around you was holding its breath. Like you were caught between timelines. And that's because you were. The portal of August was not just a transition, it was a timeline checkpoint. A threshold moment between the outdated and the destined. And if you felt fatigued, unmotivated, emotionally scattered, it's because your system was recalibrating to not chase, not control, not cling. August asked, what would you do if nothing was moving, but everything was shifting? And now comes the real shift. September isn't going to give you clarity unless you earned it. This isn't a reward, it's an activation. What's coming in September will only land if you chose energetic sovereignty in August. If you kept your nervous system grounded while everything in the spiritual field was trying to pull you into old fears. If you didn't fall for the bait of old cycles disguised in shiny new packaging. If you held your power when nothing made sense. If you trusted the void. Because September doesn't give answers to the impatient. It reveals timelines only to those who can sit through silence without self-sabotaging. This next chapter isn't about who can manifest the fastest. It's about who can hold the highest frequency the longest without chasing results. The energy of September is like a golden gate that only opens when your nervous system matches the vibration of peace, not performance. Your past coping mechanisms, overthinking, overgiving, proving your worth, won't work here. They're dead codes. You can't bypass your inner work anymore. You can't fake alignment. You can't pretend to be healed while avoiding your shadow. This is the part of the journey where your energy speaks louder than your words, and the universe responds not to what you say, but to what you embody. So if you feel the energy beginning to stir again, don't rush it. Let it rise slowly. Let September arrive instead of being summoned. This month holds real power, but only if you're ready to receive, not control. You're stepping into a version of reality where you no longer hustle for healing. Where things align because you do. Where clarity appears not because you demand it, but because you've created the silence it needs to emerge. The portal of September is earned through presence, not pressure. So ask yourself now, who did August quietly remove from your field? What thoughts resurfaced that you thought you'd healed? Where did you feel the pull to react? And what did you choose instead? Because those answers? They're your passport to what's next. So now, take a breath. Not just any breath, but a conscious one. Inhale as if you're pulling back every fragment of your power scattered across timelines. Exhale as if you're releasing every outdated version of yourself that no longer serves this chapter. Feel this moment not as a conclusion, but as an initiation. August cleared the path. September asks you to walk it with reverence. You are not who you were, and you do not need to be who you were in order to become who you're meant to be. So stand in the center of your being, rooted, unrushed, unshaken. The portal ahead doesn't open with force, it opens with frequency. And that frequency is already within you. Choose presence. Choose embodiment. And let the universe rise to meet your energy.